Thanks for joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad you decided to tune in for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports, because believe me, there's a lot to get to. We've got the NASCAR Championship weekend coming up this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. Also, we just recently had the Formula One Mexico City Grand Prix and the Supercars Gold Coast 500. So still lots of news to note to talk about. We also were off last week. I took some time off for my anniversary, but now I'm back and I'm excited to bring you the news and notes from across the racing world. But since we've got a lot to get into today, we don't have a lot of time with formalities and to get into things. So just remember, if you like this show, follow me on social media. You can do so looking down there. It's at rpeeters33, RPEETERS33. Then always make sure you've got that handy dandy little WTHR Plus app installed in your smart TV so you get brand new episodes of the Racing Report each and every week. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on into the news, starting off with Formula One. A lot to get to. Jack Crawford, American Jack Crawford, has been named Aston Martin's third and reserve driver for the 2026 season. He currently sits second in the Formula 2 championship and could have an opportunity at maybe winning it all, but for right now, we'll just have to wait and see if that happens. But good for him getting that test and third driver role there with Aston Martin. Very good to see. Meanwhile, speaking of Americans in Formula 2, Colton Herta will race for High-Tech GP during next season's F2 campaign. As of right now, we don't know who his teammate will be, but we do know that his landing spot has been High-Tech, which is a fairly decent team, if you ask me, regarding for Colton Herta. Also, speaking of again, Cadillac F1 team news. That's where Colton Herta is the test driver. Sergio Perez and the Cadillac F1 team will test at Imola in November using a 2023 Ferrari car. Now remember, for at least the next season and at least maybe a couple more seasons after that, the Cadillac F1 team will be using Ferrari engines. So this is really just kind of a way to get them up to speed and in tune with what they need to be doing in order to be a successful Formula One program. And obviously this is Ferrari's way of helping them out, seeing as they are a customer engine team for Ferrari. So important news there. Looking forward to that. See how that goes for Perez getting to jump behind the wheel of a Ferrari. Meanwhile, let's talk about recent news. The FIA says it will investigate the incident at the Mexico City Grand Prix this past weekend in which two marshals came dangerously close to being hit by Liam Lawson. This was a very scary incident. Liam Lawson was obviously very irate on the radio talking about this. It was a dangerous situation. The two marshals ran out onto the track just before Lawson arrived off of kind of a blind corner, but still a very scary incident. Thankfully, nobody was hurt in that, but the FIA is going to take a look at that to see maybe what could be done differently, or maybe see if any procedural rules were broken. Meanwhile, let's talk about Red Bull. Red Bull says it will not have a decision on its 2026 driver lineup until, quote, around Abu Dhabi. Now, that was Helmut Marko saying that, and that they are focusing on winning the Drivers' Championship with Max Verstappen. Obviously, Verstappen is relatively close with 4 races to go. We'll talk about that later on here in the show, but that's where Red Bull's focus is right now. They are focused on finishing out the season, and then probably we'll know around Abu Dhabi who's going to partner with Max Verstappen next season, whether it will be Yuki Tsunoda again or maybe somebody else. Final piece of Formula One news here to talk about. John Malone will step down as chairman of Liberty Media and Liberty Global at the start of next year. He has been with Liberty since 1991 and led the deal to purchase Formula One in 2016. He will be replaced by Robert R. Bennett beginning next year after he steps down. So some news there in the ownership world of Formula One, some change-ups there. I believe that Malone will still stay on in some reduced role capacity, but for right now, that is the news and notes from Formula One. Let's go ahead and jump now into IndyCar news. We do have quite a bit to talk about, because we learned on Wednesday that Marco Andretti has announced his retirement from auto racing, bringing an end to his near 30-year career, just about, not 30-year, but near 20-year career. And honestly, I can't say that we're all really that surprised by this. I think this was coming. Marco had obviously reduced the amounts of races that he was in, but now we know this year there will not be an Andretti at the Indianapolis 500 coming up here in 2026. So that's going to be a big something big to get used to, especially since we don't really know what the Andretti name is going to stick around. They're still called Andretti Global, but maybe that could turn around and maybe could be rebranded as TWG Motorsport. Again, that's a rumor, but what's more important now is that we know that Marco Andretti is calling it a career on his IndyCar career, and not just IndyCar, but in motorsports in general. Like I said, a career that spanned since 2006, and before then, obviously he was in Indy Lights or Indy Pro beforehand, and racing a lot of other different series to get ready for that IndyCar debut, in which he finished second at the Indianapolis 500, which was actually my first Indianapolis 500 as a fan. I was about 10 years old going to that. That was a lot of fun. And seeing Marco just barely lose it out to Sam Hornish Jr., who actually won the first IndyCar race I ever went to in Kentucky in 2003. So some cool, weird history about myself that probably nobody here is interested in. But I digress. Congratulations on Marco calling it a career. He's got 2 IndyCar wins to his name, and he's also an SRX champion. So, maybe could have been better, but all things considered, I'd say it's a relatively successful career. All right, moving on to the next piece of IndyCar news here today. AJ Foyt Racing has officially formed an alliance with HMD Motorsports to enter 2 cars in next year's Indy NXT series. Those drivers are still TBA, but at the very least, we know that AJ Foyt Racing is returning to the IndyCar feeder series after having not fielded a car since 2004, when it was the Infinity Pro Series, which is definitely going to date me and probably anybody else who remembers the Infinity Pro Series. But hey, last piece of IndyCar news here before we move on is that Takuma Sato has hinted after last week's test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that he is working on a deal, possibly working on a deal, he hinted at this, to return to the Indianapolis 500 next year. So possibly we could see Taku in another Indy 500 entry, but that so far is very up in the air. Could happen, could not. Looks like he's working toward it, but didn't really say anything definitive. He just kind of hinted that he might have something in the works, but he can't say anything too soon. So that is it for IndyCar news. Let's go ahead and move into the last piece of open-wheeled news today. We've got a lot to cover in the world of Formula E. The Formula E season is coming up here in a couple of months. It's going to start again, I believe, in December, and that's going to be one of our next racing series that's going to start right off the bat, so definitely something to look forward to there. But the big news in Formula E, couple of things here. First of all, the Sanya E-Prix is going to return to the Formula E calendar coming up on June 20th, 2026, just 2 weeks prior to the Shanghai E-Prix that is set for July 4th and 5th, and it will be the second time that the series has raced in Sanya since March 2019. Now, there was a race originally scheduled in 2020 that was inevitably canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic happening in China, which is where the Sanya E-Prix is taking place. So obviously Sanya, then Shanghai for the Formula E, so they're going to have a couple back-to-back races, and I believe the Shanghai event is a doubleheader, so they're going to have at least 3 back-to-back races in China during that summer stretch. So some news there from the Formula E world, but let's talk about something else in the Formula E world, some drivers news. We finally now have all of the drivers, all 22 drivers confirmed for their seats next year, and that was done after Cupra Kiro, excuse me, I misread that. Cupra Kiro confirmed Dan Ticktum as will return to his seat and will pair alongside Spanish rookie Pepe Marte. Ticktum did win his maiden Formula E race last season at the Jakarta E-Prix, so definitely he's looking for more coming up here, and we'll see if that happens. And then finally, this is kind of surprising. 2 Formula E veterans have announced that they are joining Jaguar TCS Racing as reserve drivers. Stoffel Van Dorn and Tom Dillman, both veterans of Formula E, will be taking those reserve roles, as they couldn't find themselves a full-time role with any of those teams coming up for this year. So very surprising to see Stoffel Van Dorn and Tom Dillman having to kind of settle for those reserve driver roles, but I'm sure that it possibly opens them up to do maybe other things in sports car racing. But as of right now, they're not going to be on the grid, at least driving, unless something crazy happens to the Jaguar TCS team starting next year. All right. That is it for the open-wheeled news. We're going to go ahead and take our first break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the news and notes from the world of supercars and the world of NASCAR. And believe me, there's a lot to get to because, like I said, I did take a week off last week, so I got a lot of stuff to catch up on. So don't go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And we're back on The Racing Report. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that commercial break. Let's go ahead and jump right on into the world of supercars from down under. Big time news that was announced this past week. Erebus has announced Job Stewart will join Cooper Murray next year, replacing the departing Jack LeBrock. Big news there. Job Stewart is a Super 2 driver, very Super 2 standout. He's getting the tap from Erebus, who is a completely different team from where they were 2 years ago, but still a good deal there for Job. He had a fairly decent run, I think, at the Bathurst and in Sandown. Meanwhile, Prema Air Racing have abruptly announced that they are parting ways, effective immediately, with Richie Stanaway. There's just 2 events left in the season. We're coming up here. 2 races left in the season, and yikes. Already done. Now, it was already announced that Stanaway was not going to return to the team next year, but now Prema Air Racing is just cutting ties with them entirely with 2 events left. So we've got coming up in a couple of weeks, I believe we're going to be in Sandown, and then we're going to also be in Adelaide, obviously, for the grand final coming up later on in November. But some very big news there out of the world of supercars. But also, hey, the NASCAR invasion does continue because, as we've talked about, Austin Cindric is going to drive in the supercars for the Adelaide Grand Final coming up here later on in November. But we also got some big news this week that Jesse Love, NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Jesse Love, who, by the way, is going to compete for a championship this weekend at Phoenix in the Xfinity Series, is going to race for Image Racing in the Dunlop Super 2 Series at Adelaide. So now, if you're unfamiliar with the Dunlop Super 2 Series, it's very much like the Xfinity Series is to NASCAR. It's the step down below supercars, and it's where primarily drivers who are up and coming get to experience what it's like to drive some of these cars. They do drive older supercars, so you won't see them in Mustangs or Camaros, but you will see them in Ford Falcons and in Holden Commodores. So very cool news there. He's going to drive a very familiar looking car. Obviously, it's going to carry the Whelen backing that is so famous and so prominent on his Xfinity Series car, but he's also going to drive the car number 57 with Norm Benning font. Love it. Gotta love it. Go check this out if you haven't taken a look at the ride yet. It's a pretty cool looking ride. You won't be able to miss it. But really cool news there for Jesse Love. That has got to be a cool deal for him, getting to go down and run a Dunlop Super 2 car, which is basically just a Holden Commodore. That's what it will be. It'll be a Holden Commodore, but still pretty cool to see him get an opportunity. So you're going to have 2 NASCAR drivers running around the streets of Adelaide coming up here in several weeks. Final piece of Supercars news here before we move on into the world of NASCAR. The 2026 Supercars calendar has been announced, and it will feature 14 rounds, the most since 2019, along with a New Zealand doubleheader in Taupo and Christchurch. The season will begin February 20th through 22nd in Sydney, and then conclude December 3rd through 6th in Adelaide. Now, again, they're going to keep the finals. We'll talk about more of who's in the next round of the finals coming up here in a little bit. But lots of news and notes there coming into supercars. But let's go ahead and move back up here to the United States and talk about the NASCAR news, because a lot of news broke over the past 2 weeks that we've got to get to. We got to get through it fast, so stay with me here. First of all, Daniel Suarez has signed with Spire Motorsports to replace Justin Haley in the number 7 Chevrolet beginning next season. So that's good news there. Daniel Suarez was looking for a ride. Now he's got one. Be very interested to see how he does compared to Carson Hocevar and Michael McDowell. But I have a belief that I think he'll be relatively competitive compared to those 2 drivers. So Meanwhile, Colleague Racing announced that it is pressing pause on their Xfinity Series program and will focus on their Cup and Truck programs for next year. Now, it is expected that they'll return to the Xfinity Series, soon to be renamed NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, as soon as Dodge is ready to make that jump up into the Cup and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. So definitely keep tabs on that, because that's pretty interesting to see there. But on the heels of that announcement, they also did announce 2 more drivers for their Ram truck program that will debut beginning next season. And 2 of those drivers will be their Xfinity Series driver, Daniel Dye, and their former Cup Series driver, Justin Haley. So Daniel Dye, Justin Haley, they will join Butterbean Queen on the Colleague Racing roster. Now, they are going to announce 5 trucks, so they still got 2 drivers left to announce coming up here whenever they decide to announce that. But as soon as they do announce that, we will make sure that you are aware of it right here on the Racing Report. So don't miss an episode. Believe me, you won't want to miss an episode. All right. Next piece of NASCAR news, and it comes from some of the fallout from last week at Martinsville. Now, if you were watching that race, you saw Sam Mayer. He was not exactly the most popular guy after that race. Now, he's been suspended for the Xfinity Series finale at Phoenix this coming weekend for intentionally wrecking Jeb Burton during the cool-down lap at Martinsville. Now, this is not really all that unprecedented. I feel like NASCAR had no other option. Points didn't matter. He was already eliminated from the championship 4. What are you going to do? Money is not going to really do anything. Might as well just park him for a race. And because they've parked him for a race, what that then means is that Haas Factory Team has called in Ryan Sieg to sub for Sam Mayer beginning this weekend, just for this weekend. Now, what's going to happen is Ryan Sieg is going to be in the 41. Now, then Kyle Sieg, his younger brother, is going to move into his normal number 39 car. And then they also have Nick Leitz driving Kyle Sieg's normal number 28. So that's going to be a big shift. Lots of 3 different drivers and 3 different seats beginning this weekend, at Phoenix. So just be aware of that if you're watching the Xfinity Series finale. That's why Ryan Sieg is in the 41, and that's why Sam Mayer is not in the race. So. Moving into the Truck Series news, Lane Riggs will return to Front Row Motorsports next season, as he has apparently signed a multi-year contract with that team to, at the very least, return to the Truck Series beginning next season. Meanwhile, Justin Bonsignor is going to once again sub for William Sawalich, who suffered a concussion during an accident at Talladega. Sawalich sat out last weekend at Martinsville, and he's again going to be sidelined for this weekend at Phoenix. But Bonsignor, who subbed for him last week at Martinsville, is going to sub for him once again this weekend at Phoenix. Meanwhile, something very interesting to note, the 2027 Daytona 500 date has been announced. It will be run on February 21st, 2027. Now, this is done because it is highly anticipated that the NFL is going to move their season back or extend their season by at least a week. Either way, they're going for that President's Day weekend slot, which means NASCAR's traditional President's Day weekend slot as the Daytona 500 is probably coming to an end as we know it, as the Super Bowl will now be held on President's Day weekend, beginning at least in 2027. So I'll know that's still a whiles away, but important to note coming up here as we get closer to the beginning of next year. Next piece of NASCAR news, Dale Earnhardt Jr. announced on Wednesday that Carson Kvapil will indeed compete full-time in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series beginning next season, but he will still share that number 1 entry with Connor Zilisch, but looks like they have something lined up yet for him to run the remaining races that he's not in the number 1. But as of right now, I don't think that's been announced. But we do know at the very least that Carson Kvapil will not be running full-time. He will be running full-time next year. It just looks like it's going to be between 2 different cars. Finally, let's talk about NASCAR lawsuit news. It's lawsuit season and it's big. All right, let's talk about this. Judge Kenneth Bell has dismissed NASCAR's counterclaim against 2311 and Front Row Motorsports in a summary judgment ruling on Tuesday. Now, all of this as a possible settlement appears on the table. We've talked about this, that this might be going for a settlement. It also could be heading for a December 1st trial. Looks like it could go either way right now. But what was really interesting was on Wednesday, the court unsealed a copy of the 2025 charter agreement and a lot of different NASCAR financials. And these are very, very interesting. Now, that charter agreement shows that these NASCAR teams signed with NASCAR that they will get a base pay of $141,000 each race, which sounds like a lot. Sounds like a lot to you and me. You know, $141,000, that sounds like a lot of money. If you're you and me, you know, we might not ever see that kind of money. Or maybe you do, you just don't ever see it in one lump sum. But that's actually not a lot for a race team to survive on. That's actually really low compared to other series. Crazy. What's also in there is that it showed that NASCAR's income has dropped $400 million from 2023 to 2024. That is an insane number. Now, all of these you can find. I highly recommend go to Bob Pockrass's Twitter account right now, and you can look these up for yourself. You could see some of these documents for them yourself. They're also on motorsport.com, JSki, lots of other places have posted them. I highly recommend taking a look at some of these documents because they're very interesting to kind of see the financial details of what NASCAR is operating each and every year on and how much they're paying out the drivers through this charter agreement. And it kind of goes to show why 2311 and FRM probably didn't want to sign the agreement. Very, very eye-opening and definitely interesting to see. But that is it for the NASCAR news of the show, and that's also it for the news segment of the show. We're going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to go ahead and recap all of the races that happened this past weekend. We're going to also get you set up with the Championship 4 in the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series, as well as we're going to break down the Formula 1 points battle, and we're going to break down the finals battle in Supercars, because we did have our first round of eliminations after the Gold Coast 500 this past weekend. So, do not go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thank you so much for sticking with us through that break. Let's go ahead and recap this past weekend in the world of auto racing. Starting off with the Cup Series, we had William Byron winning a thriller at Martinsville to secure himself into the Championship 4. He will be joined by Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson, who basically was the last driver to essentially point his way in, as Hamlin and Briscoe had already won, and then obviously Byron getting that victory on Sunday. So lots to look forward to there. I'm very curious to see who is going to be our champion. I think it could go to any one of those four drivers. Neither one of those four drivers have shown, them to be all that better than the others. Though I do think that Christopher Bell maybe got a little bit robbed by not being able to race for a championship. I think maybe he had a little bit of a better season than Kyle Larson. But that's this points format. Love it, hate it. That's what it does. Might be the last time we ever have to talk about this. Hopefully, we cross our fingers that maybe we go back to a 36-race points schedule, or maybe we just go back to the original 10-race chase. Maybe we have a 3-3-4 elimination style. First two choices certainly seem a lot better than the latter. That's my opinion. Just my opinion, and we will see. Again, NASCAR doesn't anticipate announcing any major changes to the points system until after Phoenix. So who knows when we'll actually know what kind of point system we're running next season, but I'm very curious to see what we end up with. In the Xfinity Series, Taylor Gray got redemption for last year, and that was a pretty big deal. Lots of chaos coming down to that last race in the Xfinity Series at Phoenix. Definitely a big heartbreaker for some of those guys that were going for it, especially someone like Brandon Jones, who was in, then he was out, then he was in, then he was out. Then was just 2 spots shy of maybe winning the race when he needed to win the race because Carson Kvapil was on a tear coming up through the field, and he just got just the amount of points he needed in order to advance himself into the Championship 4. And so we do know now who's going to race for an Xfinity Series champion. That's going to be Connor Zilisch, Justin Allgaier, Jesse Love, and Carson Kvapil. Definitely looking forward to seeing what ends up there. Obviously, I think like pretty much everybody else says if Zilisch doesn't win that's going to be a bad look and a black eye to NASCAR. But then looks like Jordan Bianchi went on a podcast today and was like, well, if you really want to see a 36-race schedule come back, maybe you want to see Zilisch or someone like Corey Heim lose their respective championships, because then maybe NASCAR is going to be more forced to change the format maybe into a 36-race format. So kind of a double-edged sword there. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't matter. Hopefully NASCAR does what's right for the sport, but ultimately we'll just have to see. Meanwhile, as we move on into the Truck Series, let's talk about the Truck Series. Corey Heim winning again. That's his 11th 11th Truck Series win of the season. Insane run that he's been on. But here's the crazy thing. The Championship 4 in the Truck Series is a lot different. It is not what you expected it to be. Obviously, you expected Corey Heim to be there, but he's also joined by Caden Honeycutt, Tyler Ankrum, and Ty Majeski probably should have been in there too anyway, but Ankrum and Honeycutt, that is very interesting to me that those two guys made it. And obviously, Layden Riggs with a problem at Martinsville, not what he needed. Now he's not going to run for a championship, which is disappointing. I need to double check here to see where is he actually in the points, because I think he was 5th. Yeah, he's 5th. So he's tough one. It's a tough break, as he's been the only other driver to challenge Corey Heim all season, and he's not running for a championship, which is just disappointing. But I think Heim would have locked this up under old non-playoff point standings anyway, so go figure. But still, he probably should have been 2nd in the standings instead of 5th. But at this point, who knows? It's NASCAR. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the Formula One news. Also, this is big. We've got 4 races left to go in the Formula One season. So we've got Brazil coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we go to Las Vegas. Then we go back over to Europe, Middle East for Qatar. And then we finish the season at Abu Dhabi. We've also got 2 sprint races left coming up this in a couple of weeks' time at Brazil. And then also at Qatar. So lots of points are still on the table for this Formula One season. So don't think it's over. Don't think it's over. This championship battle is by all means not over. And here's the thing. Lando Norris won this weekend at Mexico City, and he takes over the points lead over his teammate Oscar Piastri. But it's a 1-point lead over Piastri. Now, what about Max Verstappen? Max Verstappen is 36 points behind Lando Norris, which means any 3 of those guys, depending on how the next 4 events go, plus, again, we've got 2 sprint races, which means that's at least 16 points, maximum of 16 points that are on the table still, bonus points, basically, for winning both sprints. Anyone who would be able to do that could maximize their opportunity. Verstappen is probably going to be the guy who's like, yes, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go try and win this. And for now, it's the McLarens. They've got to go out there and get podiums, because Piastri has not podiumed for the last several races. Meanwhile, Norris has. Verstappen has been on the up and up since the summer break ended. Spicy Formula One championship race coming up here. You won't want to miss a single event that. And remember, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix is coming up here in a couple of weeks' time. So don't want to miss that. It's going to be a fun event for sure. All right, and then let's finally finish up the weekend recap with the Supercars event. We had the Supercars Gold Coast 500, 250-kilometer races down on the Surfers Paradise circuit. Not exactly like what we used to see the IndyCar Series race on back in the day, but it's still basically the same circuit. It's just been truncated a little bit. Still a beautiful circuit. Arguably one of the most beautiful, prettiest, and picturesque street circuits on the planet. Probably only matched by Long Beach. Maybe St. Petersburg, but also wondering what a Cape Town Formula E Grand Prix might look like. That might be pretty as well. But I digress. Chaz Mostert sweeping both races. Thrillers. Honest thrillers, but bad luck there for Brody Kostecki. Did not have a good race at all. Crashed during qualifying and practice. Couldn't get anything going throughout the race. He's eliminated now from the finals. Also eliminated from the finals were Ryan Wood and Anton De Pasquale. So those are the 3 people that were eliminated from the finals after Gold Coast. Now we're going to go ahead and move into, I believe, Sandown. Hopefully I'm not mistaken in that we are going to Sandown. We are going to Sandown. I said double check. But coming up here in a couple of weeks' time as well. And we'll see who's eliminated after that and who's going to run for a championship during the Adelaide Grand Final coming up here in a couple of weeks' time. Now, the only races that are coming up this weekend are going to be NASCAR and Phoenix. So we've got the NASCAR Truck Series on Friday, the Xfinity Series on Saturday, and the Cup Series on Sunday. You can watch all of those coming up here this weekend. We're going to find out who's going to win the championship, and I'm curious to see who it's going to be. And I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys next week, and I think it should be exciting. But also maybe, hopefully, this might be the last time we ever have to have a championship be decided this way. We'll see. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Remember, if you like this show, follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33, RPEETERS33. And then, as always, make sure you've got that WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV so you can get brand new episodes each and every week that they're released, as well as be able to watch live local newscasts and much more, all within your fingertips whenever you want, and it's entirely free. So, thanks so much again for WTHR Plus. My name is Rob Peeters, and this has been The Racing Report.